covered with it, pursue his dreams, his ambitions. But it's also, I think, a telling point that the big movie star, the Bollywood star whose autograph he wants, doesn't even notice that this little ragamuffin is covered with feces. He just signs the autograph and goes on, indicating a lot of things, one of which I think is that the very wealthy aren't noticing the terrible conditions in which the impoverished live. The idea that there is this vast gap in India, and as you pointed out, in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, we saw that in City of God. We've seen a more recent movie, Once Upon a Time in Rio. So these things exist everywhere, but sometimes showing them, depicting them, you're not just making a documentary. You're not making a document. You're using it for the imagery that has dramatic resonance and character developing resonance as well.
It's actually great you bring that up, because that scene probably has created the most conversation and dialogue from the movie. But what I thought was very poignant was that when he had finished all that, they showed the mom scrubbing him clean. And that to me was the positive part, that she was trying so hard to keep her kids clean, in spite of what they were surrounded by, in its most metaphorical sense. And I think the director needs to be really commended. What a touch of reality, but what a touch of positivity. That, there are people who live in that filth and squalor and are still trying so hard to stay away from it or move out of it and move up and beyond, over and beyond. And like you said, yes, the big wealthy film star didn't even notice what was going on. He just signed it. And so I think there are so many positive moments that you can pick up from it, that it's not negative. It's about the people that are looking out for hope and to pursue better and bigger dreams.
And to continue the metaphor, he goes through all of this. He literally has to dig himself out of this mess. He's covered with this mess and gets that autograph. And then his brother thinks nothing of selling this, of making a buck out of it. No matter, his brother literally had to, dig himself out of a cesspool. And that, to me, is very revealing of the character. And that tells us a lot about the two brothers that we're going to see revealed later on in the film.
What we all notice, and some people who are arguing about, is just slums. But I think the irony of the situation is behind that life. I mean, after having that bath, the kids have been kicked to the school, so they have a regular life. They go to school. They have their private times. I mean, there's so much innocence in their lives, even in that slums. It's not that, of course, they're living in hell, They have their life of their own, and they're enjoying in their own world of theirs among all this poverty and other harsh squalor and dirt.
You said we're not obsessed, but we love drama. So why don't they love the drama of Shah Rukh Khan, the biggest Bollywood star of Indian movies, who does a lot of drama of romance, singing and dancing, which does not exist in Hollywood? So why doesn't that attract the West so much?
This is strictly anecdotal, but I suspect that a tiny, tiny percent of Americans have seen more than one or two Indian films in their entire lives. That may be an exaggeration, but I don't think it is. I've seen. I had to think when you asked me, Born in Brothels, had I seen it? Yes, I had, and it moved me so much I literally couldn't sleep for some time, and I put it out of my mind. That's why I couldn't remember it. But we don't see a lot of Indian films, so we haven't been introduced to, all the different kinds of. It's not just Bollywood, as we know. There's Collywood and Jollywood and on, lots of woods that we Americans have no clue exist. And we blithely sail along. Somebody hands us a really cool drama, and we watch it, and we enjoy it, and we react to it. But until we start becoming obsessed with some of these things, and I don't think that we ever will become obsessed, but we do. We had a conversation earlier before the camera started rolling about Americans' resistance to knowing what's going on in the rest of the world. I think that's changing because the world has been thrown in our laps more and more. We now know where Iraq is. We now know where we now know that Mumbai used to be Bombay. I don't know, I always liked Bombay. It was easier for me to say. But we are, as a culture, beginning to wake up very slowly. We were a big giant in that way. But I think that's the reason why people don't go to, never heard of the guy you're talking about. We just don't know. We're just blithely ignorant.
Something else to consider, and it's so simple a factor that we tend to maybe overlook it. Slumdog Millionaire has been released by Fox Searchlight. That means it's got a lot of money behind it. They can buy ads on primetime television for it. Zing is King, for example, opened on 2 screens, mainstream megaplex screens here in Houston, without any newspaper ads, any television advertising. I mean, I just lucked upon it because I saw a listing in the grid for all the movies that were playing at the AMC theaters that week. Now, I can't help but believe, but Zing is King and Gajini and several other recent Bollywood productions would have found a ready audience, an avid audience in this country if they would have had Fox Searchlight behind them. So maybe it's just a matter of, as more U.S. distributors get it into their head, there's money to be made. There's an audience, there's an underserved audience out there to be tapped, but also we can appeal to, native-born, if you want to call moviegoers, with the promise of something different, something exotic, if you will. The idea that, well, if you like Slumdog Millionaire, maybe you'll like this.
I think the reason why sometimes some of the Indians who are living abroad are being a bit defensive is, like James, you said, of the ignorance of world news, as in what's India like. And I think when they just have portraying the slum, and we get questions like, so did you wear jeans in India? Did you live like that in India? Kind of makes us more defensive, also because it's a developing country and it's not a developed country. And the second part is that we feel, will that affect our work life? Is that when I'm going to walk in a meeting or a conference room filled with Americans, are they going to judge me?
I think we are all here as first-generation immigrants, and so we feel the need to prove ourselves over and above what we are even given credit or recognized for. We're constantly working at projecting everything in a positive light. We're also working very hard to keep our traditions and our culture. So anything negative, we tend to want to wish away or not come to full light. And that's why we tend to get defensive. But again, I want to repeat what even has come out of Slumdog. I think so much positive has come out of Slumdog Millionaire. Yes, we've portrayed India with some very negative features. But what's come to light to the rest of the world is that, yes, this exists in what is now considered one of the big business centers of the world. Bombay is one of the biggest business centers of the world. It has a very high level of functioning, but it also, it has the highest real estate in the world, the most expensive, abutting right next to the filth and the squalor of the slums. I think we as first-generation immigrants, Indians, need to learn that we don't have to have an explanation for everything. We are who we are, and we are who we are because of where we came from and the life experiences that we were able to accumulate. We're very comfortable with great diversity, not just in racial diversity, not just in religious diversity. We're very comfortable with socioeconomic diversity, and we know how to deal with it. That's why sometimes we may sound blasé and we think, oh yeah, the beggars on the street are there and we're going to be there, and everything just kind of, runs along at its normal pace. So it's just something that we have to learn as first-generation immigrants. My grown children, don't feel the need to explain it. This is the way half the world lives. It's quite all right.
I think that was my first reaction after I saw some Slumdog, that what would people think as India's image? And I had gone with 5 of my girlfriends, and 2 of them are Japanese Americans, 1 of them Vietnamese, and 2 Canadians. And I asked them, and I said, no, we will never assume that this is the image of an entire India. No, they never thought it that way. It was just my reaction. They thought that, okay, poverty is one part of it, but India has a lot of good things to rave about. I mean, it's emerging. People always talk about Indians as being very compassionate, and they know it from examples, I don't know from where. But they thought that this was one aspect of it, and they thought it's everywhere. So why would they even assume that this is India? No.